Second item, Carol Harrison, Public Technology Seminar on Strategic Planning in Washington, D.C. from May the 29th to June the 1st in the amount of $744. I have a question for Mr. Feldman.
Okay, that's right. Sorry.
How do you arrive at your logic of even putting this on the agenda? I think that takes more nerve than I've ever seen since I've been on council. Would you please explain?
Sure. I'll certainly try, Mr. Morley. One of the newer things going on in this business is really something that's quite old in the private sector, and it's called strategic planning. One of the items that council discussed was, again, its reaffirmation of longer-range planning. Strategic planning is a concept that utilizes public and private sectors working together to kind of chart a destiny of a community. Many of the more progressive cities in this country are now starting on that pathway. I think it's very important that we understand that process. I've asked Mrs. Harrison, even prior to this seminar being advertised, to begin to try to understand it so she can better inform me and I can better inform you. When we noticed the conference advertised, it became a logical extension of what she's already doing. And Mrs. Harrison is a member of this city as Police Officer Byrd and as Mr. Kradicki. In the same way, we're concerned about Mr. Byrd or Officer Byrd and Mr. Kradicki having appropriate training. It's the same type of training I would hope that Mrs. Harrison, this is not for her own personal use, understand. This is something that she would come back and hopefully provide to me and I can share with you. It's probably one of the more important efforts I would think that council would want to undertake.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Feldman, I thought the only, I believe you've made the statement many times, it's got to be a department head that travels out of state.
That's right.
When was she appointed to department head?
She's not. She's a civil service employee, Mr. Marlene, and the reason, again, that I would take exception is, or make an exception, is that the whole strategic planning process is a policy. It's policy-oriented. In other words, it's oriented to you and to me. It's not oriented to the individual employee. She, in essence, she is going basically as a gatherer of information, as somebody that can sit and talk with other cities that are doing this to bring that back so we can begin to share what's going on.
Mr. Feldman, I have a question. Does she work directly for you or directly for Mr. McCullough?
She's a management analyst, Mr. Marlene, and as such, she ultimately works for the deputy city manager.
That was not part of the 83, 84, 85 budget.
Mrs.
City manager only had one person. That was himself.
Right. Sometimes I question that.
You say the city manager?
No, I said deputy city manager.
That's what I thought you said.
Yeah, right.
The deputy city manager only has himself. He's not liable to anybody else.
The office
in the budget.
Okay, that's true. In Dick's office, that's correct. But ultimately, if you go back to the organizational chart, Gordon and Carolyn both report into the deputy city manager.
I have another question. As a rule, when we get a new department, they're brought before the council for the council's recommendation. During the budget hearing, I made my opinion known as far as that particular department is concerned. We did not approve the budget as submitted. And I think it's no more than right that the city council has a prerogative of granting your request that Mr. McCullough be coming. Because since I've been on council, he's had 4 or 5 jobs. Every time something comes up, it's Mr. McCullough, Mr. McCullough. I think when I come aboard, Mr. O'Reilly was doing our labor negotiations, and Mr. McCullough took that over. And in other words, I just believe that we cut the budget back to what it was in '83 and '84, and we should stick to our policy as far as travel is concerned. If you say
Point of
that
order,
it must...
Mr. Chairman. Are we discussing Mr. McCullough's traveling or Mrs. Harrison traveling?
We're discussing Mrs. Harrison,
So-
department heads.
What's the motion on the floor?
The
There
motion on the
isn't
floor...
any at this time.
Why
The
the
motion on the
discussion
floor.
isn't a motion?
is to deny. I'll make
Support.
a motion to deny.
Call the question.
Mr. Marling?
Yes.
Mrs. Martinek?
Yes.
Mr. Benavides?
No.
Mr. Glinski?
No.
Mrs. Gush? Yes. Mayor Madar?
No.
Mr. Nadi?
No.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Glinski.
motion to approve.
Support. Call the question.
Mr. Glinski?
Yes.
Mr. Benavides?
Yes.
Mrs. Gush? No. Mayor Madar?
Yes.
Mrs. Martinek?
No.
Mr. Marling?
No.
Mr. Nadi?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman,